Thanks very much for sticking around this afternoon. I'm sure it's been a very busy few days for you, and it's great to see so many in the room. It's so close to the end of the journey. Given that it is the afternoon, I'm going to try and make this as light and involving as possible. For me, it's a subject I'm very passionate about. I think packaging and design can make an enormous difference to the way that brands are perceived and to the level of success that they enjoy. Whilst the subject I've been given is quite a broad catch-all in terms of marketing, I wouldn't specifically think I could do marketing justice this afternoon. We know that marketing is everything from photography to design to advertising to visual merchandising, all of those aspects which I think would probably take a day of my time to talk you through. A bit louder, is that better? So instead what I'm going to do today is focus on what I think is the pointy end, and that is packaging and design. I think if you can get that part of the equation right, then you've got a much stronger opportunity to really obviously see your product moving off the shelves in local and offshore markets. So that's the subject, very much about packaging, branding and design, and I'll get straight into it. My first slide is a quote. It's one that I think we've all seen on many occasions. I would have attributed it to one of the cooking shows such as MasterChef or Jamie Oliver or Nigella, but the truth is, on research I discovered that it was written back in 1716, and I find that quite intriguing really, because it was obviously very, very relevant then, but it's even more relevant today. That notion that our visual stimulation is absolutely crucial when we come to choose one product over another. And you've only got to look at your competitive set today to realise that unless your product can be visually engaging with your buyers and with your end customers, then you're going to be left on the shelf, and the rest is history. The real lesson out of this quote is, to my mind, is invest. And I'm not talking about investing huge dollars, I'm talking about investing cleverly in smart execution. And smart execution of products starts with photography. I believe it's often underrated. It's easy to think, well, we'll get the guy down the road to bung off a few photos of my carrots or beans or whatever they are. But I really would encourage you to think twice about that, because if you do it properly, the difference can be tenfold in terms of the success you'll enjoy. So whether you're selling caviar or whether you're selling, I think, bok choy, if you're willing to put some money into the presentation, then the end result is outstanding. So too, design is just as important as photography. Alina Wheeler, who's regarded as a leading branding expert out of the States, wrote this quote in the early 80s. Again, a very relevant comment. She is saying that design and packaging are really, when intelligently expressed, are the most visible ways of building strong brands. And for mine, there's no stronger evidence of great design than that was created by Charles Lewis Tiffany in 1837 when he arrived in New York, soon after he created the little blue box. And that, to me, has gone on to become an amazing symbol or icon of outstanding design. A key part of that design is the colour palette. And the interesting thing about the colour, that tealy colour, is that it's now actually entered the language. It's known as Tiffany blue. And for me, you know, the vision to be able to think through that concept, create a design that's so enduring, that's been around for well over 100 years, and it's just such a powerful metaphor for that brand. The interesting thing is, it's so powerful in my mind that you could put that design on almost any product and it would be imbued with the same values as the Tiffany brand. And by way of example, if we were to grab a tub of yogurt and give it the Tiffany treatment, I instantly suggest that tub of yogurt might be worth $50 as opposed to $2, which maybe normally would have commanded at Coles or Woolies. So therein lies the essence of design. If you crack the code, if you do it well, if you execute well, then the margin is there for you to enjoy. Equally, there are countless examples of this kind of execution. Nike started the air revolution back in 1987 with the Air Max, and for more than 30 years Nike has staked its claim on air technology. And for my mind, what a great packaging solution to embed the air shoe into an airbag. Very, very inexpensive, but what a marvellous statement, what a marvellous way to present a brand. But look, for every great success, and these are the very pointy end of success, we unfortunately see enormous evidence of failure as well. And this German grocery chain, Billa, launched this range of so-called fresh bananas back in 2012. And it was one of the biggest failures of all time. Why on earth you would peel a banana and then wrap it in plastic, I have no idea, and nor did the consumer. And in fact, the consumer voted with their finger on Facebook with thousands of quotes such that Billa had to shut down their website. One classic quote was, "This is the ultimate symbol of waste and throwaway in a society that's disposable." So I just urge you to think through the options and make sure that you've got your plan in place. I'm glad we've eaten, because this is possibly even more revolting. A very poor example of poor execution in the meat category, one of which I was involved for many years with meat and livestock. If you get it wrong, it's very wrong, and I would defy anyone to want to pick up that kind of sausage on the shelf of any supermarket. Moving on to positioning. Positioning is the game. You're not in the markets alone. You need your product to fit in and stand out from the competitive set. This to me is an outstanding range of superfoods under the Viviana brand name. Very cleverly presented, beautifully packaged, stunning design. The product is the hero. For me, it almost ticks every box right down to the brand name, Viviana, Vivar meaning living and Vita meaning life. This is a product for the next generation of customer who really wants to engage with superfoods, and a super package like this positions them very well to succeed. Moving on to a category that's near and dear to all of us, the beer market. Carlsberg produce 36 billion bottles of beer a year. That's an enormous amount of the amber fluid. From a positioning point of view, they've decided to take the high ground. They've decided that glass recycling has got to disappear, and that the future lies in disposable cardboard technology. And so hopefully later this year we're going to see Carlsberg as the first major play in the market, moving into a whole new packaging remit. And I applaud them. I think it's a great initiative. It's a great proof of positioning for a brand that is a market leader to roll the dice and have a crack in a new technology. On a lighter note, talking about positioning, here's a very clever design idea, I think, that clearly positions Brown's skim milk as the solution to obesity, with a rather attractive derriere there on the back of the pack and the line missing, suggesting that, of course, if you consume their skim milk, then you'll lose that part of your backside. I think a very, very nice, neat, humorous solution. Look, another quote, this time from Charles de Gaulle. He said, "How can you govern a country which has 246 varieties of cheese?" And my take out of that quote was the inference that the consumer is not one consumer. The consumer is massive cultural contrast, religious, social, etc. And we need to really start to think about the consumer at various levels, and make sure, above all, that we've done an enormous amount of research to understand to whom we want to purchase our product. When we move into some of the markets close and far, we look at Europe, 230 languages spoken, but even closer to home in Asia, some 2,000 plus languages spoken. So again, if we start to want to market and export, we better understand who it is we're talking to and how to talk to them. A lot of talk about China, 1.3 billion people. For me, the interesting fact is not about the 1.3 billion, it's about the 400 million of them who actually do not communicate in Mandarin. 400 million people in China do not communicate in Mandarin. So again, we really need to think that through. If we're playing with the thought of getting into a China, that's going to present huge challenges, and we must obviously respect those. If we don't respect them, we do get it terribly wrong. Who would have thought this product would have sold terribly well anywhere? My understanding it is quite a good product. It's Gatorade for dogs. It's the sort of thing, if you want to get your dog in prime condition, then you give him pet sweat. I just, for one, would have spent a little bit more time thinking about what customer would possibly want to engage with that product, or indeed with this one. What a huge clunker. Or indeed this one, even worse, I think. And yet there's countless examples of people who go to all the trouble to, grow a product, put it in a pack, and then do this to it, and wonder why it's the butt of many jokes. Pardon the pun. And finally, of course, I don't think this one would go down terribly well either. So it's nice to see a laugh on a closing afternoon presentation, but I think taking me slightly seriously, I am saying you need to do your homework. That's the message. So with that in mind, I've got quite a few guiding principles here, which I'll just race through, and we'll just provide a few examples of each. The first thing I think that we need to think of always is differentiation. We don't have any market exclusively to ourselves. So you take this brand, Prima Flor out of Spain. I think their lettuce for me is a standout. It looks great, it's well presented, it's really jumping off the shelf in terms of freshness, and the packaging actually conveys the message extremely effectively. Next lesson would be display. Publix is a chain of Florida-based supermarkets that I think are doing an outstanding job with their private label vegetables. Who would have thought carrots or turnips in a tin can would have much appeal? To my mind, when you put them in a package like this, they actually really do resonate, they really do appeal, and I think there's a lot to be gained from that. Equally, I think the egg industry, we could take a leaf out of their book. They've had to create a highly protective product to avoid, obviously, spoilage on shelf. But I think beyond that, the organic, the agricultural, the earthy cues that come out of this kind of packaging really present some interesting opportunities for some of our product as well. Moving on, there are more examples. Asparagus is one that's near and dear to a few of us in the room. Here's a very clever example, I think, from Gourmet Trading. They're a California-based company who are using, I think, smart recipe solutions to really involve the customer in the supermarket to see what they can do with that product. Again, very clever presentation. Another one, using that famous expression, the apple never falls far from the tree. I think a lovely piece of packaging here that promotes freshness, homegrown, local produce. Again, the sort of product that I believe would have enormous appeal. Further lessons, it's important to engage, and sometimes we can find new technology that allows us to go the extra distance with consumers. This is laser technology that's being currently used on certain types of fruits. And again, I think for some of us, it may present a great opportunity to be quite innovative and engaging with our customers. Access is very important. We are in a time-poor society these days. The good old kiwi fruit is not the most easy product to consume with its furry skin and its juicy base. So here I think is a very clever solution from Quick Kiwi to take the pain away from eating a kiwi fruit. Just find a spoon and tub it out. Delicious. Personality is something that's often very underlooked in the marketing of fruit and veg in particular. The good old collie doesn't really jump off the shelf on many occasions, but I believe that when you personalise it, when you call a collie Shirl or Doris or Doug or Bob, you're actually starting to put a smile on people's faces and really elicit a response and an enthusiasm to say, well, I think I might take Doris home tonight and put her in the oven. Moving on, I'll talk a little bit about convenience. I talked about our ever-demanding, time-poor customer. If we can make it easy for him or her to consume our product, this is a great example, the single shots of olive oil or balsamic vinegar, which are obviously very easy to apply, and I think it ticks many boxes for today's consumer. I used the Carlsberg example earlier about waste reduction. Closer to home, here's a very good example, I think, of organic, reusable, recyclable packaging, which not only looks stunning, it also obviously delivers to that environmental remit. And I think if we can deliver on both of those measures, satisfy people's environmental ambition, but also showcase our product in a really creative and interesting way, then again, we're onto something pretty good. For me, this is probably the best example of clever packaging I've ever seen. And forgive me using so many egg examples, but this just jumped off the internet and into my presentation. I don't think I need to say any more. It's just very clever design, well expressed, well executed. So too is this brand out of New York, Dean and DeLuca, a small upmarket chain of grocery produce. For me, the ultimate game is about delivering value, and value is obviously not just price, value is quality. And I think this is a great example of a range of maple syrups, beautifully packaged, stunning presentation, very reasonable price point, which I think would attract enormous appeal and offtake in supermarket. Merchandising, and I'm moving forward as quickly as I can. Merchandising is very important. This brand, Sunset out of Florida, I think, exceptional in the way that they bulk merchandise their produce, be it peppers, tomatoes, cucumbers. When you put them all together, they tell a lovely story of quality and obviously colour and so on, vibrancy. And into Canada, I understand that Bartlett pears are sort of heartland Canada, out of British Columbia. A strong heritage story, beautifully expressed in a quality cardboard outer, which when you merchandise it with other members of its brand stable, I think you get a very strong message of quality for their pears and apples and so on and so forth. Merchandising, I keep going back to eggs. I don't know why, eggs are eggs, aren't they? But again, these guys broke the rules. Most people are stuck in this world of a carton of eggs, of 12 eggs. Someone decided that, well, there's 7 days in a week, so why don't we just have 7 eggs and put them in a round box? And suddenly you've got a different paradigm. I think it's a beautiful presentation. When it's bulk merchandise, when you've got some colour into it, again, you've got an opportunity to really appeal to both the sell-in and the end customer. I guess my final point really is about building a brand, and some of you have touched on this earlier today, that really is the end game. If you're going to invest in taking your product to offshore markets, you only really want to try and do it once, right, from a design brand point of view, because it's quite expensive. So what I would encourage you to do is to do all the homework up front. Good photography, good designers, good brand development will lead to a great execution. And this brand, for me, Absolute, is one of the greats. I think over the last 30 years, they have produced well over 2,000 or 3,000 different individual designs of vodka under the Absolute brand name. But for me, the interesting point is every single bottle that they've produced is unmistakably Absolute vodka. And if you can crack that code, if you can come up with a core brand story and then leverage it throughout your range of whatever it is, then you've got something that'll buy you 10 or 15 or 20 or 30 years in the marketplace. And for many of us, that's when the money really starts to come back in, when we reap the rewards of being consistent and having a strong brand message in the marketplace. So I will leave you with what I think is the best example of design that I've seen in your category. It's a brand called Orto Romi out of Italy, and they launched a range of fresh cut salads back in the mid-2000s. I chose it, A, because I know it won many awards, but B, because I genuinely do like it. In 2014, it won the Gold Medal Award for Best Packaging in Europe, and to me, it's just very clever. The idea on their website was to create a new graphic language for fresh cut salads, an elegant and polished one that could show a playful side for recreating the alphabet letters on pack. Sounds a bit highbrow, but when you look at their product, I think it's just absolutely beautifully presented fresh cut lettuce, salads and so on. And if we could all be doing that kind of thing, I genuinely believe we'd be reaping great rewards. and finally the last one, pleasures of the season. So in conclusion, my final quote from J.R. Tolkien was, shortcuts make long delays. And by that I mean that it is very easy to think that this is a short proposition, a short game. Suddenly you pick up an order in Malaysia or China or somewhere, and you bang out a product, you get a photo taken, you get it packaged, and off you go, and you may make a buck or two. But to my mind, it's very short-term thinking. I really think you need to, as I said up front, do the homework thoroughly, invest in quality, invest in good designers, seek some good counsel from people who have done this kind of thing before, take a little bit more time, get it right, and the results will be there for the long run. That's what I've got to say today. Thank you.